Have anybody tried the lavender cream foam?
Oh, I've never heard those words in that
Lavender
order.
cream cold foam on top of your coffee. It's the best. Happy spring.
Hello and welcome to Hardly Working Through It, the show after the show where we take a deep dive into life, love, and labor. I'm one of your co-hosts, and I'm SP.
And I'm Kelly, and today we're going to be taking a look at all of the best and worst relationship/dating advice that you guys have gotten. So thank you for everyone that sent it in. We got so many things.
Tons and tons.
We won't be able to go through them all, but we are going to go through definitely some of them today. But yeah, you know, after last week when we got to talk about our own best and worst dating advice, sometimes it's fun to hear what other people get because some of it's outrageous.
Yeah. Some of the bad stuff on here
is outrageous.
Like, wow.
Yeah, and some of the good stuff, I think we both really resonated with, and we're like, oh yeah, like we maybe forgot that one, or that's
exactly.
good.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's jump into it. We're going to start with the bad, but I want to throw this in to give some context to the bad. I've heard this said before, and I want to say it out loud because some of this stuff is not helpful advice.
No.
Don't take criticism from anyone that you wouldn't ask for advice from. If you don't trust someone in where they're at with their life and you wouldn't ask for them to give you advice, don't take criticism for them.
Yeah.
I would also say, if you don't like the way their life looks, don't not take advice, but take it with a grain of salt because you can learn a lot from other people's mistakes.
Yep.
Let's jump into the first of the bad advice that you sent in. I am not including anyone's names on this because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings in case it gets around. But here's the first one.
Bad advice. And they said that this was bad advice. We didn't determine whether it was bad or good.
No, yeah, they said
like,
yeah, like they wrote this is good. I say it's bad. No, here's the first bad one. Find someone who loves you more than you love them. This came up a lot.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting is I was having a conversation with somebody a while ago, and they said to me that their father told them, they're like, I've only learned one thing from my father. He was a terrible person, but one thing. He said, in every relationship, there's someone who gives the love and someone who receives the love.
No.
It doesn't go both ways. And this dude said, after my first marriage, I was always the giver. And I said, I'm never going to do that again. And then I found someone who gives the love and I take it and I receive it. And it works out great. But you know what sucks is now that person is what you were before. That's the person who's giving, and giving.
Yeah.
So that was what I was thinking of when I read this. Find someone who loves you more than you love them.
It's dumb.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And also, I think it kind of takes away the idea that you guys in a relationship, you're both people. Like when we grew up, I don't know about this for you. Let me just say, I think we grew up in similar enough cultures that it used to be like, find someone that completes you. Like you bring 50%, they bring 50%, and you make a whole.
Yeah.
And that mathematically works really well, but realistically doesn't.
Yeah.
So I think something like this takes away people's agency a little bit as well. Like you are a 100% a person.
Yeah.
And you can love as much as you want to love. And it's not contingent upon, someone loving you more or less.
Yeah. This feels like an old timey thing.
A lot of the bad advice is.
Yeah. Like something that you would have, like our parents would have believed or their parents would have believed, because what it tells me, it truly, when you read it, I was like, oh yeah, that's a man talking, saying like, find someone who loves you more than you love them, because it's a control thing.
Ooh.
Yeah. Find a woman that loves you more than you'll ever love them. So they'll always be pining to try to make sure that they get that love back.
Affection and attention.
Yeah. They're always going to love you the
leave.
most. Yeah. And they won't leave because they're waiting for you to give that back because you're loving them just enough, but not going over the top. So that's why I think it's dumb advice.
It is dumb advice. Good advice? No. Bad advice?
Bad advice. Yeah.
Nah, that's whack.
But you know what I mean? Like that's what it reminds me of when
it does
when you
feel
hear
like
me
that.
say
Yeah.
that. I'm like, love someone. No.
It feels like it came from a time where like men married women, but then didn't really contribute to the relationship or the home or I guess I can say this. My mom would talk about her childhood and how her father, who's passed and was a lovely person, truly. I wish you could have met him. He was a good guy. But she said, like, he didn't spend time with us. He spent time tinkering in the garage and working on little electronics and stuff like that. And then coming in to enforce the rules of the house. Like,
Yeah.
he wasn't
The expectation.
And I think that kind of was what it was back in the day. And that's where I feel like at least this piece of advice kind of stems from that type of culture and tone.
Yeah.
Like the woman has a spot and the man has a spot, and always make sure you find a woman that loves you more than you love her, because you're never going to love a woman that much, because you're not emotionally available enough to do it anyway.
Yeah. And that woman needs to love you more because they're not working. They're the home, not the homebody, the homemaker.
Homemaker, yeah.
And so like they have to love you more because they don't want you to leave them, because if you leave them, they're a homemaker.
That's true.
What do they do?
Also, bad advice, I'm throwing this in here. Find someone that can support you, because when that person leaves you and you're left with nothing and no job and experience.
You're left with nothing, no job and experience.
You want to talk about a piece of good advice?
Sure.
I thought this was good advice as well. Find someone who has the attitude that, quote, everything is workoutable. You're able to work out anything.
That's pretty good advice. Do you feel that way about yourself?
I feel that way about you and I. I mean, barring, murder, I think.
That's workoutable.
Yeah, for one of us, the one who's left.
Oh, I thought you meant like if we murdered somebody.
Oh, is that why you gave me a wink?
Yeah, I was like,
I'm sorry, do you want to murder?
Shh, not on the podcast.
Okay. Tell me later.
But it's workoutable.
I won't get into
I'd lie for you.
This is turning to true crime evidence very quickly. I want it to be clear
Perfect
that
weapon?
God.
Icicle.
It's not.
It melts.
You know what the perfect medicine is?
What?
Medicine.
Weapon?
Weapon is medicine. No, it's like sodium clogging up the arteries. It's probably slowly poisoning someone like...
They can still detect that.
All right, then throw them in a river.
They'll find the body.
Give them some cinder block shoes. See? Sleep with the fishes.
Oh my gosh. When do we become gangsters?
This is
the
not,
mob.
This is not the...
Planning the perfect murder?
My perfect crime episode.
Join me on my next podcast.
Honestly,
just kidding.
I think that would be fun to do a working through it. That's like the perfect crime.
Oh my gosh.
How I would have done it. But that is not this episode. Everything's workoutable. You and I were talking about this the other day. I won't get into exactly the specifics of it, but I basically was telling you, like, even the worst and hardest things that we could do to harm, hurt, or betray each other, I'm not talking physically harm anyone, of course, like, I still think we could figure it out and work it out.
Yeah.
Because
we want to. We both want to.
Yeah, and the context was like, I don't see you possessively like my wife. Yeah. I see you as my partner, like an equal, all that kind of stuff.
As you should.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
And not as property or the homemaker or the one who has, whatever. But I think that's why it's all our relationship doesn't ride on the one aspect of being like husband, wife, or the one aspect of being romantically involved, or the one aspect, whatever. Like, it's so complex. And as long as I can speak for us, as long as we keep our attention on the things that are important and address the issues that are coming up, I think everything is workoutable.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that is good advice. But I think it's important to find someone who believes that and lives that out. Because we're learning, like, specifically in this season with our daughter, it's weird, is that, like, words mean nothing, action is everything. Like, you can say you're sorry, you can say something's workoutable or whatever, but if you continue to do the same thing without making changes, then, like, your words don't mean anything, because now you're just saying the right things to make everything okay in the moment, but you're not making a physical change to make it better moving forward. So
that's what I had to tell Brooklyn. I'll spare the details of this too, but it was a tough week with some stuff, and she was like, hey, I'm sorry. And I said, thank you for saying that. This is the 4th day in a row we've been dealing with this, and while I appreciate the apology, what I need to see is a change in behavior. Which
we say the same thing, because I've definitely said that to her before. I've said something like, I appreciate you saying sorry, but sorry means nothing if you don't change, or if there's no action to change. So she's hearing the same thing. Yeah. But I think that is important in relationships as well. It's the idea of, like, if I say to you everything's workoutable, but then when we get in conflict, I'm like, no, like,
we're getting divorced.
Yeah, I'm leaving. Yeah. And, like, I'm not coming back until I'm ready, and, like, maybe divorce, like, all that stuff. Like,
that's the thing is,
action, like, works directly against me saying everything's workoutable. Even if I come back and I'm like, no, it is workoutable. It's like, which I don't think is a word, but we're using it.
We're making it happen.
But, like, my actions don't prove that, even though I can come back and be like, no, just kidding, we can work out. It's like the damage has already been done.
I think that's the key, though, is, like, if you're going to subscribe to the thought that everything is workoutable, it has to be both people subscribing to that thought.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that feelings are not going to get hurt and that you don't necessarily, that you won't need space from the other person to like process through your emotions or work out what you want to say. But it means that both of you are willing and have the intention to always work it out. And that, I think this is the important part of that is I think it's having the intention or not losing sight of the fact that like at the end of the day, like I know if I'm talking about you, like I know you love me unconditionally. And just because we're in conflict or just because you said something that hurt my feelings or just because you did something that hurt my feelings or vice versa, like I can keep front of mind, like, but he loves me.
Yeah. And he's not going to ruin my life by doing something stupid.
Yeah. He's not trying to leave me. He's not intentionally trying to hurt me. He's not, he's not trying to prove a point or get something out of me. Like mistakes were made. Yeah. But I know that the truth, the foundation of our relationship is that we love each other and he loves me. And so we're going to work it out. And I think that's an important part of that workoutable.
Yeah. I like the phrase. Everything's workoutable. But that, like, to me, the key is both people have to agree to that. And I think there's some good accountability there too, is like, if we agree that everything's workoutable, then when you do something that like, you're like, I'm done with this relationship, I can say, hey, didn't we agree that everything's workoutable? Yeah. And you saying that is telling me that this isn't workoutable.
Yeah. But that is also, again, if you're both agreeing to that, it also means that you're both agreeing to follow whatever other rules or things that you guys have agreed on. Because if you're like, everything's workoutable, but like, I went and cheated on somebody, but hey, we agreed everything's workoutable.
Yeah,
I'm like,
that's manipulative.
Yeah. But I'm like, yeah, it is workoutable. But like you broke one of our core boundaries and rules. Yeah. Which is to not go outside of our marriage and do that thing. And so like, is it workoutable? I don't know because
well, it depends on the intention. Yeah. If you break it because you know that there's no accountability. Yeah. That's, I mean, look, it's all bad, but I do still think that's different than like something I didn't seek this out or it happened. Again, it's all bad. And like I said to your comment about someone going like, I'm going to do this because I know everything's workoutable. That's manipulative. And this next piece of bad advice is manipulation 101. But before I get into that, I just wanted to say this is really just for me that I need to rewire some pathways in my brain and drop some baggage and stuff. It is so interesting to sit on a podcast that goes out to tons of people and talk to you and use the word divorce and that kind of stuff. Because growing up and even in my early adult life and marriage, it was like, don't use the D word. Don't ever say this. Yeah. And the idea was like, once you open Pandora's box, you know, it's out there. Yeah. And I'm encouraged that you and I can talk about that stuff, use those words and not let the idea of that word put fear into our lives. Like, I think people give it so much power that it makes it a scarier thing than it is. I'm not talking about divorce as a thing. I'm talking about the word. Yeah. Yes.
I think it's interesting that you say that because you and your ex-wife did have the conversation.
Which one?
Like it was a conversation of like, we're not going to use the divorce word. Like,
because our small group told us that.
Yeah, but you like had a conversation about it, right? Where like you sat down, you kind of talked about it and talked about maybe boundaries or rules or whatever. Yeah. I think it's so interesting. You and I have never had that conversation. We're not like, hey, we're never going to like, let's sit down and talk about the fact that we're never going to get a divorce. It's like an unspoken thing. And yeah, we've said it before. Like, of course we never get a divorce, but like it's like an unspoken thing between us that we're like, yeah, like it's not even on the table. It's not something we even think about. It's not something that we have to like warn the other person about or be like, we're not going to do this. It's just like, yeah, we love each other and like we're in this.
And everyone, feel free to play this clip back when we ultimately get divorced. No, but that's the thing is like, I know that you and I have an inherent trust in each other.
He'll be in the ground. I'm just kidding.
Oh, is that the murder you were talking about earlier?
Yes, icicle. Just kidding.
Yeah, if I die with a very suspicious hole in my chest with no weapon.
Prove it.
The password to the safe.
I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh. Side note. Nope, this will be for another thing. Yeah. But if you can help me remember.
Yeah. Password to the safe. Got it.
Okay, yes. It's not about me. It's a wild story, but it's more of a hardly working and a not working through it. Anyway, you and I have that trust where it's like we're not going to threaten the other person with that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because I think that's what happens. I think when you have that, so it's just now gone off into a different topic, but I think when you, I'm like, you either agree that everything's workoutable or you, in my opinion, or you agree that you never say divorce. But I think if you're on that side where you're like, yeah, we're never going to get divorced and all that stuff, I think you almost set yourself up for failure sometimes, or you set yourself up to be able to use that as an argument or as something to start conflict. Because it's like, if you don't have the trust to be like, everything's workoutable, but you've had, again, the conversation that's like, we're not going to get a divorce, we're not even going to say the word. Like, it tends to be that I have seen it happen. It tends to be that when you have this conversation over here about not having divorce or not getting divorced, it tends to be a conversation that comes up more. Does that make sense?
It's the Buddhist principle that as long as you're pushing against something, it still has power.
Isn't that weird?
You.
Like, but it tends to be the thing, like when you get in conflict, if you've had that conversation, it's like, well, you said that we would never do this. Like, you know that you can't do that. But it's like, that shouldn't even be a part of it. Because obviously that means your brain is thinking about it.
Yeah.
Versus like everything's workoutable. So like, we're going to work it out to the best of our ability, minus like a few very out there things.
Yeah.
That's like, okay.
I think the thing in my experience that's sad and ironic about couples that I have personally known that are like, we never use the D word, is that they find workarounds to say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Because I was in small groups with these people who were like, this week, this person, blah, blah, blah. Like, they're putting it all out there. And of course, I'm never going to say who these people are. I would never violate their privacy and their personal information, anything like that. But I can tell you a common thread amongst these people who are like, we never use the D word, are people who get into arguments. And instead of saying that, they go, maybe you should have just never gotten together.
Yeah.
Or my mom was right. I shouldn't have married you. It's like,
it's almost like more ammo.
Yeah. But it's like saying the same thing without saying the word.
Yeah. Or maybe we just shouldn't be together.
Exactly.
It's like,
yeah, I'm sorry.
What does that mean?
What are we saying?
What are we saying?
Yes. It's weird. I love you, and I'm glad we
too.
have a healthy relationship in terms of that.
Yeah, but me too. And I'm glad that you understood what I was saying, because I think it's very true. And I've experienced the same thing. Obviously, I was never in a small group while I was married.
Yeah.
But I was around enough people that were married that would kind of share similar things, you know. And just is an interesting... Gosh, I wish, and this is a topic for another time, but I wish that divorce could be destigmatized. Is that the right word?
Uh-huh.
Because I do think that it's become this scary thing that like nobody wants it to happen to their relationship, but sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's actually better for you. And sometimes, even though it's a hard thing, it's the best thing you can do.
I had quite a few people on my TikTok talk to me about how they wish that their parents who stayed together for the kids wouldn't do that.
Yeah, because it makes it worse. Sometimes it makes it harder. But I wish that. And I think it would take some of that power away of like, don't use the D word. We can't say divorce in our marriage. I'm like, yeah, but if that wasn't even on the table, if it was just like agreed that like if at any point
it's a threat that you have in your pocket. It's not a threat,
because if at any point in time we both feel like this isn't positive or working out or good for both parties, like we can just have a conversation about it versus like, I'm going to threaten you. It's now, like I said, ammunition that I'm using against you, or it's the threat. That's the thing in my back pocket that I always have to dangle over your head if and when you slip up or you mess up or you do something to hurt, quote unquote, hurt me enough that I'm like, well, maybe we shouldn't be together anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, how dumb is that? Like, what if we just took it off the table and it wasn't a big deal? How much power would you have over me then if you were like, maybe we shouldn't be together? I'd be like, maybe not. Like, let's talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's non-threatening. Now it's just a conversation that we're having.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that takes a high level of a lot of things.
Yeah. Work out.
Ableness, attitude, whatever it is. Well, let's get into some more bad advice.
Sorry.
The manipulator advice.
But to wrap that up, I would say, I do think that's great advice to say you should find someone that you can
work out things with.
Yeah. Because I think that's a really important part of it, and to be on the same page and speak the same language. But
agreed. So this next one is bad advice. And it struck me as one of the most manipulative things that I had heard out of all the bad advice.
Ooh.
Here's what it is. If your man is not being nice to you, don't tell your mom or friends, because when you guys get over it, your mom and friends will hate him and you won't be able to have a nice family relationship.
No.
That is gaslighting, manipulating 101. And I can hear if that's, your mom telling you this or whatever, they've probably gone through it. I understand. But this is what manipulators and gaslighters do, like at the very core of who they are, which is I don't want to bother your mom with knowing this because then it's going to affect us when we come over for Thanksgiving. Don't tell your friend that we're going through this thing. Like, then they're going to think that I'm a jerk because they don't have all the pieces of what you do, whatever that is. That is so manipulative. I also don't think that the extreme reverse of that isn't okay too. You don't want to just air your dirty laundry to any and everyone who would listen because it's not everyone's business. But if you have a problem that you need to go to a friend, I shouldn't even say need because even that is like a gaslighter's best friend of like needs versus you just want to do this to manipulate me or to have your whatever. It's not even a need. If you feel that you want to talk to your parents, family, or friends about something in your relationship, do it. And if that person has a problem with that, unless you're like intentionally going around trying to badmouth or belittle someone, which happens, if you need help, get help.
Yeah. Yes. I look at this at like a lower level than you did.
Yeah.
Because you took it pretty high up there, which I think is important. But I look at it and I go, like, all of us have friends that we've been friends with before we were in relationships.
Sure.
Probably. And our family. If you have a good relationship with your family, you probably have brothers or sisters or your mom and your dad who have been with you and who know you and have watched you at every stage. Like, it should totally be okay. And it should be normalized that we're able to go and say like, ugh, yeah, Pat and I got in a fight. Sorry, SP and I got in a fight the other day. And he said this thing and it like hurt my feelings, you know? Because I think something that our society really lacks, and this is what we do this with Brooklyn, or we show this with Brooklyn a lot, is I think it's like the same, it's what the media says too. It's like our society lacks the understanding of what like a real relationship looks like all the time. Like, it's either dramatized on reality TV shows or it's made to look amazing in television movies and with unrealistic like expectations. But I think it's more important to show like realness of what it is. All couples get in fights. It doesn't matter how perfect you are for each other. Everybody gets in conflict. It just is a part of life. And I wish we could talk about it more, about the bad and the good, because it's important. Like, it's totally okay if you and I get in an argument and I call my mom because I'm frustrated because I need advice from someone who's older and wiser.
Which happens like 3 times a day.
Right? You know what I mean? But I should be able to do that
100%.
In the same way that I would hope that my mom would circle back with me and be like, hey, like, whatever happened with you and SP, like, did you guys work it out? And I should be able to be like, oh yeah, we did. Thank you so much for the advice, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Because that shows a healthy relationship. And I think it gives a good pulse on where your relationship is. Because was it someone just being mean or yelling? Is that what the thing was?
It said, if your man is not being nice to you.
Yeah. But I would say that the people that we're going to ask for advice and we're sharing this stuff with are probably some of the closest people in our lives that we're talking to. And if they're starting to see a pattern of behavior, I would hope that my friends would tell me that. I would hope that the people that I consider the closest people in my life, my confidants, the people that I trust, would tell me if they think that the relationship I'm in is bad.
I don't know if you have any friends in your life that would tell you that, but I think that your mom would tell you that.
My mom 100% has in the past and would. But do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not here to say that you and I are perfect, because we're not. We have our own conflicts and things.
Pretty perfect.
We're pretty great, but no,
of course,
we believe in that everything is workoutable. Like that, that is a true statement. It wasn't ours, but that is true. Doesn't mean we don't get in conflict or don't argue about things or are not always on the same page. We are a lot of the time, and I feel lucky about that, but not always.
Yeah.
But I would hope that if it became either way, that if it became normal for either one of us to be abusive with our words or be mean, that the people in our lives, that we would feel comfortable and confident enough to share with the people in our lives, and we would each give the space for that on either end, and that we would trust the people in our lives who are coming to us saying like, hey, like, I don't know that she's treating you really well or he's treating you really well. I think it's an important part of that. And I agree with you when you say manipulation and gaslighting. Like, yeah, you should have a partner that wants you to talk to people and wants you to grow, because just because we're grown adults doesn't mean that we're grown.
Yeah. You know, it's tricky because if you do have a partner that doesn't want you to talk to people about it, like, it's hard because that's a personal journey for everyone. That's a confidence and insecurity journey that everyone has to go on their own. How much they're comfortable about the world knowing who they intrinsically and personally are. Because no one, with rare exception, no one knows you the real you more than your partner or spouse generally, because you're spending the most time. They see you at your best and your worst and everything in between. And that's not always information we want the rest of the world to have.
That's true. And at the same time, like, yes, I hear you in that. At the same time, if you're in a loving and respectful relationship and honest and open, then even if you're not aware of your shortcomings, you should, if you're all of those things towards your spouse, like you should still want your spouse to be able to work through stuff and have a healthy life or have like a health, whatever it is, you know, be able to talk to people about it because you, like, I know that if something were to happen between us, like, I know that you love me and I love you, and you're never gonna, while you're gonna be honest, if I like did something to hurt you, like, you're never gonna be like, I hate her and she's the worst. Like, you know, you're never gonna talk poorly about me.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you can't talk honestly about a conflict we're in or whatever. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I would want you to do that. It's like, if you needed advice or I'd be like, yeah, you have to give all the details in order for someone to actually give advice and be able to work through stuff. Yeah. And what I was gonna also say to that is like, everyone is struggling with not wanting the world to see who they are. But also, if you're a bad person, like if you're hitting your spouse or whatever, like, sorry, that's who you are. Yeah. And it's not your spouse's fault that they shared that. It's your fault for choosing to be the person that hits or abuses or whatever.
Right. So I have two thoughts on this that go right along with this. It's interesting to think back like 70 years ago in the 50s, like Stepford wives, like never act like there's a problem anywhere. Everything's perfect. Yeah. And that was kind of the facade people try to put up. Now, I mean, I'm guessing I wasn't alive then. Now, I think everyone understands the reality that marriage and relationship comes with conflict and comes with difficult things, but still don't put it out for people to see, you know? And I get that. We do 2 shows a week and we hardly, if ever, talk about our specific conflicts and that kind of stuff.
That's true.
Pardon me. But it's interesting. It's like, now we all know that things can be difficult, but still so few people want to actually talk about it. So that was interesting to me. The more interesting thing was what you were talking about. And I want to read this one more time because I think it's important, the verbiage here. If your man is not being nice to you, stop there. So the situation is your partner, in this case the man, but either way, if this person that you're with is not being nice to you, don't tell your mom or friends, because when you guys get over it, they'll hate him and you won't have a good relationship. If what's happening in your marriage and relationship is bad enough that your closest friends and family wouldn't like the person that you're married to because they found out about how he or she was treating you, that's the real problem here. The problem isn't whether or not I should talk to somebody. The problem is if you know it's bad enough that it would change the way your friends and family view your partner or spouse, that's the real problem. And if you can't talk to your friends and family, you got to find a therapist or have some common ground of where you can talk to. And you can ask that question, who can we talk to about this? Because if it's bad enough that it will literally change the opinion of this person to your family, then it's bad enough that it needs to change.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that bad advice.
Yeah, I was additionally going to add in that if like you can't talk, if you don't feel like you can talk to your family or whatever about it, like therapy and therapists are now so available to every single person. Like, you should at least be talking to your therapist about it. And you should be wary for the people in your life that are telling you that your therapist is manipulating you or is lying and is not telling the truth. Because like a therapist is literally just there to...
They're not there to keep you together.
No, they're there to tell you the truth and to like help you come to the understanding. And truly, in my experience, they're helping you have realizations that you just haven't allowed yourself to have yet. That you're like on the cusp of, but you just... haven't done.
Therapist can be the truth finds you in your ready moment in your life. Yeah. You know, more than a friend at times.
Yeah. So
we've got a lot more pieces, but I'd love to hit 3 and 3. And this will be our 3rd piece of good advice. No, it's only our 2nd.
Okay, go for it.
Listen to your partner very closely when they tell you who they are and what they want.
True.
We talked about this a little bit last week in a different way, which was, I think it was last week. My advice that I had heard was when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Yeah. But I think this goes even further, not just that in terms of people's character, but I've seen and heard about so many people who are like, yeah, we got married and he wanted this and she wanted this. And I just figured we'd cross that bridge when we get there. Mm-hmm. Important things like do we want to have kids? Like, he doesn't, but I really do. And maybe in a few years he'll change his mind. But if he's clearly told you like he doesn't want that, doesn't mean it can't change.
Yeah.
But don't be surprised when it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, when someone's like, yeah, I want to live close to my family and they're on the East Coast. And you're like, well, I don't want to leave my family and they're on the West Coast. Well, let's just still get married and figure it out. And it's so hard because when you're in love with someone, you're like, I can make concessions or push things off till later because I want to have this marriage or relationship.
But big things.
But when I'm looking back at this, when it says, listen to your partner very closely when they tell you who they are, their attitudes, their characters, kind of like what we were talking about last week, and what they want. And the thing I would add on to it is don't be surprised or expect them to change what they want later on or who they are.
Yeah, because it's who they are.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I think it's a great piece of advice.
Especially for people who want to get married young.
Yeah, and I would say this, and this just bleeds into the last question too, like, if you are dating someone before you get married, you should be bringing your significant other around your friends that you trust the most or your family, because they're going to see who they really are and listen to them when they tell you. And I think it's something we're bad at as a society, is giving advice, because I think we want everyone to be happy. And so when someone's dating someone, we're like, yay, great. Even if we don't really agree with who they are.
I think the people who give too much advice are the people that you don't want to hear advice from. And the people who have good advice are often the ones who feel like they'll ask if they want to hear it from me.
Yeah. So I would just say, people are going to show you who they really are, but you will have to have your eyes open enough to see it. If you don't feel like you can, trust the people that you trust the most.
Yeah. But you also have to be kind of honest and authentic with how things are, which goes back to what we were talking about before, is like, you have to be able to tell people how things really are, or be able to hear them when they go. Like, a great example, personal example in my life, was when I was wanting to get engaged the first time. This was not you, my first marriage. And I was talking to my mom about it. She had said, I was like, hey, here's what I want to do. And she was like, okay. And it wasn't met with a lot of congratulations and excitement. It was met with the phrase, this is not the path I would have chosen for you, which is a very articulate and kind way to say, like, I think you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
To which she was right. She also said that to me about my career in ministry, which I don't look back on as a mistake, but she wanted me to be an accountant at the time, and that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think it is really difficult to figure out, like you said, how do you tell someone you love that the person they love might not be a good fit for them? Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, one, what do we know? Who knows? Like, maybe it's great and we just don't know. But we talked about it before on the show where we're like, do you feel like you could guess the people that would make it and not make it? And you're like, oh yeah, 100%.
100%.
Yeah. Except there's also so many people that
stay in it just to stay in it.
Well, I can only speak from my experience with, like, there's a lot of pressure from communities to stay together in places that aren't great. And you're met with a hesitation to talk about the reality of things because you don't want to have a bad relationship with your family or friends because you said what was really going on. Or in my case, you finally talk about what's going on and people are like, oh, don't worry, we can fix that. Or whatever they say. Anyway, listen to the person and believe them when they say, and I'm not saying like, if they're like, I'm going to harm you, like, believe that too. But I mean, listen to the subtleties of the way people act and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Before
you make a legally binding commitment to someone that the government would have to step in order to dissolve.
Yep.
It's my little personal life experience for you. Want some more bad advice?
Always.
All right, let's take a look. Oh, no, we just did bad advice, didn't we? No. We're back to the good advice, but I talked about the bad too. It's all mixing together.
You just talked about the repercussions if you don't do that.
Here's the next one. Marriage is hard and you will have to struggle through it.
So stupid. We've talked about this before on Hardly Working.
Yeah, it came up a few times that got sent in, and so I wanted to hit it because it's still the narrative around marriage.
Yeah, I don't think that marriage is hard. I think that there are hard moments, but it's in your life. Are there not hard moments? Are there not hard decisions that you have to make? Are there not things that you have to work through?
Yeah, and that's
every season of life, like when you're in high school, the biggest and hardest decision you could ever make is what college do I go to afterward?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or who do I go with to prom? Am I going to go hurt this person do you know what I mean? Like, I think in any aspect of your life, it's difficult, but it shouldn't be so hard that every moment you're spending in sadness or despair or
and
unhappiness.
That's what I hate about that sentiment, is that feeling of like the idea rather that if you're miserable in your marriage and it's hard, that makes sense because that's what marriage is.
Yeah, that's not what marriage is, guys.
No, there's pieces of difficulty.
Everything is hard.
For sure. But at the same time, that should be the place that you go for refuge and to find your biggest cheerleaders and your moments of joy and purpose and all that. It shouldn't be like, I go to work for joy and purpose and I come home to be miserable.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of us find ourselves accidentally in those situations or trapped in those situations. And that's tough. And I'm so sorry if you're trapped in a relationship like that. Chances are, if you're listening to this show, which is all about the antithesis of that, which is like enjoying your marriage and enjoying your partner and enjoying your life, that might not a lot of people listening to this might actually hate their relationships, but I don't know where you're at. Yeah. I hope you don't hate your relationship, and I hope it doesn't feel like work all the time. And I want you to know that if you believe that narrative that marriage is supposed to be hard, let me just tell you that it doesn't have to be hard. Yeah. Like don't settle. Yeah. Like the great Melody Sweeney says. She does say that all the time. Settle. Don't settle. It's good advice. We don't need to go too much into it because we've talked about marriage not being, shouldn't be that hard. It's great. Yeah. Here's another interesting one. A good piece of advice. Find someone that you fight well with. You will always get along when things are good. I think it kind of comes down to the workoutable stuff too, but maybe more than that. We've talked on the show about my last relationship and the difference in conflict styles. Yeah. One being actually, let me put it in terms of my biological mom and dad. I only have one mom, but I have a biological dad and a stepdad. My actual parents. Yeah. My dad's conflict style was very aggressive, very in your face, very loud. Sounds familiar. Very not to you. Intoxicated. Yeah. Sorry. It's like, not to you. And my mom's conflict style is the opposite of that. And that's the conflict style that I also adopted. Sounds familiar. Yeah. Which is, I heard it said recently, it was like the classic pursue and retreat or something. Like the aggressor is pursuing this, and then the people like me are backing off going, whoa, like I don't want a part of this. Like I'm not here to yell and scream and throw stuff. Yeah. Christopher Walken, is that what that is? Wow. That's what you sounded like when you did that, when you went, wow. Okay, sorry. But the downside of the conflict style that I've adopted is that it can be passive aggressive, and we've talked about it. It's like you won't know that I'm upset with you because I'm yelling at you. You'll know I'm upset with you because I'm ignoring you, which is not healthy, and it's something that I'm working on. But those are I'm just kidding. But I think I'm getting better, working on it. I'm hardly working through it. I'm trying to get better for sure. Well, yeah. But so that's just a good example of two different conflict styles that don't work well together. Yeah. Peanut butter and chocolate, amazing. Peanut butter and gravel, not amazing. Yeah. Like sometimes two conflict styles don't work together. They are not two great tastes that taste great together. But I think that you can change your conflict style. And I'll say that because my conflict style which is interesting, is that with how I used to be, you would be considered the aggressor. That's true. And that's really interesting. Because I would shut down and turn off and then just start going, okay. Yeah. I think that was like a trauma response for you. Yeah, it was. And I've worked through that a lot in therapy. And it happens every so often. But it's so rare. But I've gotten better at being able to identify and to tell you, like, which I think is a big part. Yeah. To say, hey, I can tell that I'm shutting down, which I used to not be able to do. But I agree with what you're saying, or what this person said, is find someone that you can fight well with. Is that what? Yeah. But I also think it's important to know that like you can also grow and change and learn how to fight well with your partner. That's true. If you want to. I don't ever think that an aggressor, in the sense that you were saying, like someone who's a yeller and who seeks out conflict, because that's what it kind of feels like, and someone who is like averse to conflict, that. Like I don't know that will. I don't know that will ever work, because part of learning how to have healthy conflict, or how to be able to fight in the same way, is learning like, oh, the way that I'm communicating to you is not the way that you're hearing me. Yeah. In the same way that like I've told you, if you ask me a leading question, like
I'm never going to be able to answer that well, because to me, my trauma flags and trauma walls go up where I go, nothing I say is ever going to be the right answer. So like now I don't know what to do. Versus like being able to have a good conversation in the midst of conflict. Say, hey, like my feelings are really hurt. Like I'd like to talk about this. Is now a good time, or whatever it is for us. Because it changes depending on what we're talking about and depending on how each of us are doing. But I do think that's a really important thing. But I would say that I think it's hard to figure that out, one, until you've had conflict with the person, and then two, until you understand yourself and why you respond to certain things, certain ways. Because we've talked about this too. This is just a lot about conflict and how, and
sure.
But my dad, when I was younger, I always describe it, and my mom and him do too, as like a 0 to 60 type of like angry.
Yeah.
He's not that way anymore. He hasn't been that way in many, many, many years.
Yeah.
But that's really how he was. That was a lot of what I saw. Where my mom was more like, let's look at all the different sides, which was great. I hated it at times, but like I had both of those. And so I know that I can have the tendency to go from 0 to 60 at times, but it's something that I've worked on to be like, well, I don't feel like I'm that way anymore. If anything, I'm like, let's look at, let me try to understand how you're feeling, or let me understand how this person's feeling, or whatever.
Well, that's what I was going to say too. I think your dad is a great example of changing your conflict style. Yeah. But for me personally, I wonder if it's the exception that proves the rule a little bit.
It might be.
Because for me, in my personal experience, so this is totally anecdotal and it's not truth or fact, I have not seen people change their conflict style.
True.
Especially when it's very large, very extreme rather, one way or the other. At the same time, what you're describing is something that I have seen work well when someone's willing to do it, which is learning the tools to try to do better. Like for you, you don't stop shutting down because you've changed. You've stopped, I'm making an assumption, so correct me. You stopped shutting down because now you can see, feel, and sense the signs of when you're beginning to do that.
And communicate it.
Yeah. Which helps you know that, I'm coming into this thing where I could shut down, and lets me know the same thing to go, let me ease off whatever's happening here, because neither of us want to go down that path.
Because that makes it worse. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I don't necessarily know that, to me, that is you changing your conflict style as much as you utilizing the tools that you've learned through therapy and through our relationship and different relationships to handle the negative parts of your conflict style in the same way that I'm doing it with being passive aggressive or silent or whatever, to try to use our conflict style as individuals in a more healthy way.
True. And I hear that. This is a whole other podcast, but I believe that conflict is something that's learned and can be developed just like any other skill.
Sure. Yeah.
And so when you talk about people who are really aggressive, who are yellers, who are abusers in their own right, whether that be physically or verbally, or emotionally, like abusive, I think that those people learn those behaviors and make a decision to either say, I'm going to use tools, like healthy tools, to help be a better communicator, or I'm going to lean into the fact that this is who I am. Because I do think that everyone can change their conflict styles. I look at it from, if you take out the relationship part and you put it into like a work setting, like just because, let's say that I'm an aggressive person who's a yeller, just because I'm a yeller doesn't mean I can go into every single reprimand conversation yelling and being aggressive towards people that I'm holding accountable.
Right.
That's not appropriate. So I have to learn appropriate tools of how to do that correctly, right?
Yeah.
And I believe, and if I don't do that correctly, guess what? There are repercussions for me.
Sure.
As the leader, but I'm learning appropriate tools of how to have these appropriate conversations in a way that is still getting my point across and still communicating the right things, and still standing my ground, but doing it in a professional, appropriate manner. I think that the same can be true of personal relationships as well. And I think there are people out there that believe that they are always right no matter what, and that will die on their whatever hill it is every single time.
Yep.
And that they refuse to see that they need to change because they think that this is the appropriate way to fight, and I don't need any tools or anything. This is how you do it. This is the right way. And the funnier thing for me about that is most of those people are therapists, are professionals in work environments that do with that, like HR, things like deal with it on a normal basis, are a pastor. Truly.
I was going to say, well, the position of priest, pastor, head of a church, whatever, is often sought out by people who believe that they have all the answers
Yes.
and that they're called to tell everyone the answers, to shepherd their flock by telling them what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
And so it does at times, certainly not always, draw in that type of authoritarian figure.
Yeah. Yes. And to kind of circle all this up is that I believe that each and every single one of us has aggression in us.
Yeah.
Because we all have things that we really believe are right and wrong. Some of us might see middle and see gray, but there are things in everyone's life that they're like, this is right and that is wrong. And you can't change my mind on those things. Like, that's what it is. I think all of us have the ability, but all of us have the ability to be aggressive in those sense.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is that as you begin to become more aware of yourself, you begin to be more aware of your emotions, and of how to appropriately communicate with people. And if you really care, you begin to be more aware of your partner and how they communicate. I think you choose, that builds the way that you do conflict or the way that you communicate correctly. I would put this not unpopular opinion, this piece of advice right alongside like knowing how to speak the same language as your partner, because I think that really ties into conflict as well. That was a really long-winded thing. I hope anybody took something away from that.
Well, what's fun about these episodes for me is that all of it, everything that we're reading and saying is just like, here's something good to think about.
Yeah.
And if it's not relevant, that's fine. But hopefully something, like, it's all just good information.
Yeah.
Relational, personal, whatever. And so take what you can use and lose the rest.
Yep.
So I'm sure many people connect with that.
True. But I'm standing firmly on the conflict is learned behavior. And if it's learned behavior, then you can
unlearn
grow and unlearn and find appropriate tools and things to help.
You know what's interesting though, and we talked about this on Hardly Working this week too, when we were talking about like, not everyone wants to climb the corporate ladder. Not everyone wants to grow. That is true personally, interpersonally, and relationally as well. Not everyone has a desire to grow and change and be different than they are.
True.
I was talking to my mom about this, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this. She was talking about some of her first relationships, and it might have even been the first person she was married to. No, I think it was talking about my dad, and she said, I just assumed that everyone wanted the same thing: white picket fence, family, kids. And you never knew my father, but in my father, I know we crap on him a little bit, but you know, he was a good guy, but also kind of a rolling stone. Like, my mom describes him as the person that would have been happy spending a year of his life in a different state every year. Like, he didn't share the same dreams and values and that kind of stuff. And I don't think that he wanted to.
Yeah.
To his credit, he stuck pretty close for most of me and Megan's life, or the part that he was alive for. And that went against his nature. But just, it goes back to when someone shows you who they are, believe them.
I was going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say that maybe you're right that conflict behaviors can be changed, but it has to be within a person who's desiring to make a change.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to get at it. And I think there's work that you have to put in that not everybody wants to put in. And I think everyone has to put in different levels of work because, again, I do believe that conflict is learned behavior.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't get to choose who our parents are. And some of our parents are really good at conflict and some of them are pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But, you know, there's, in the same way that if I wanted to work for NASA, I couldn't do it right now, but I could put all of the work in to hopefully get there one day by going to the right schools and really learning and really trying to get at that, right? Yeah. I believe that conflict is the same.
Yeah. I think you can learn and grow, but in my experience, I've never seen someone really change. Not never, rarely.
I think I've changed in my conflict style.
You've grown.
Yeah, I think
you're not now a person who yells when you weren't a person who yelled.
Yeah. But you know? I'm just saying, like, I think people can grow.
Well, this is medium advice then. Middle of the road, not good, gosh. Not bad. No, it's all good.
Just do.
Well, we've got time for just one more piece of bad advice.
Okay.
And this was one that came up shockingly amount.
Exactly which one this is.
Like quite a few times on Instagram, on TikTok.
Let's do it.
People responded to the post that we put up there. Bad advice. It does not matter if he has another woman as long as you are the one in the house / the wife. And I'll couple this with the next one. My grandpa said, not mine. someone's grandpa said, let him cheat and get it out of his system.
Nah,
it'll
man.
help him.
That's whack.
Boys will be boys.
That's what that is.
Men are just men.
Yeah. Times are changing, everybody.
I agree. And here's the deal. I understand that there's many people, and certainly more than I realize, that have agreements and understandings.
And open relationships. Yeah,
totally,
go for it.
That's not who we're talking about here. This is like monogamous relationships that they're getting this advice for, specifically here, to say things like let him cheat, get it out of his system, or it doesn't matter if there's other girls on the side as long as you're the number one. Like, that is terrible advice.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to say about it other than it's terrible advice. Like, especially woman to woman, you shouldn't ever be second best, even if you're number one at home. Like, you're either number one in his life or you're not in his life at all, in my opinion.
If you're not first, you're last. That's Ricky Bobby, Talladega Nights.
Yeah, but it's true. Yeah. Because that's a piece of trust right there. Like, I trust that you're going to come home from all of your gigs to me and that you're not going to do anything when you're on the road. I never worry about that with you, for the record, but like, it's a trust that we have. Yeah, of course. And I am not the type of person, and we don't have the relationship where I'm like, yeah, do whatever you want. Whenever you want, that's just not who we are. And that's okay. But I think that's such BS advice. Like, boys will be boys. Let them do what they want. As long as you're the one in the bed at the end of the night, like, you cool. I'm like, no. Yeah. As if that's boys get to have some responsibility too. It's not just the girls at home making dinner and ordering the groceries and doing all the things. No. Boys can have some responsibility. And now that a lot of females work now and are the ones who bring in the quote unquote bacon, bring home the bacon. Yeah. Like, come on, guys. Yeah. We're more into partnerships now than we are into like, I'm the man and I can do whatever I want. Yeah. I don't know why I always go to country accent when I do that. Like a Texan accent. I have a guess. Yeah. I don't know if we talked about it on any of the shows, but there was a big news story going around about a pastor who was live streamed, who essentially said from the pulpit, if you're dressed in shorts and you get sexually assaulted and I'm on the jury, I'm letting that guy go free because you asked for it. Well, he said like a man is going to do what a man's going to do, which just implies that men are inherently predators and men are inherently people that you should be scared of for your safety. And like, one, I don't necessarily disagree that a lot of men are that way. Yeah, but to say that that's just how it is, because society gives them the okay. Like, yeah, like if a girl's wearing that. Yeah, well, it's like when we grew up in the church culture, it was like if a girl has a bunch of boyfriends or sleeps around, she's a whore. And if a boy does it, he's a player. Yeah. Like, and that's okay. Yeah. He'll come around. It's okay. Time. He'll be forgiven, but like, you're a slut and you shouldn't do that. And you have to repent. Yeah. It's crazy. It's a double standard. Yeah. The reason I bring up the man who was an elderly pastor who said this is because I do think this is an old philosophy. For sure. And maybe it worked back then. But let me tell you, what's so funny though is now that we live in a culture that is more accepting of non-monogamous, polyamorous, or open relationships, those are still looked down on. Yeah. They're like, that's weird, that's odd. Yet when we talk about old philosophy of like, well, just let him cheat as long as you're okay, that was accepted and acceptable. Like, well, just let it get him out of his system. And this is weird. Consensual understanding of things is the weird part. It shouldn't be the weird part. It is kind of weird that's whatever. It's all weird and it's all bad advice. Yeah, I think that's bad advice. But I will say this, since I don't want to wrap up on just bad. I'll give you a quick good one as we just to put a little light and love into our life. And this is one that you and I talk about all the time. See your spouse as your partner and as your teammate. Yeah, 100%. Great That's what we are. We're partners. You can't tell me otherwise. Yeah. You do the laundry. I order the groceries. You helped with the laundry. I'm just saying we have our, Yeah. But I hope everyone out there can find a partner that you guys are truly partners and truly lean on each other in all things. Because there's nothing more special than that, in my opinion. Of feeling fully supported in everything that you do. And that it goes both ways. Yeah. So. I forget how the nursery rhyme version of this went, but I saw somebody on TikTok, and I've seen it a few times, singing that song where it was like, your wife is your partner, not your mom. Like, your wife is your partner, not
not the role that your mom used to play of making you food
or
and cleaning
picking
your
up
dishes.
after you.
Yeah, exactly. Like you guys are partners. And I think that's one of the best parts of our relationship for me. Like one of my favorite parts of our relationship is that we are partners. And we talked about it. I don't know if it was the show or the one before, but that's why I don't see you possessively as my wife.
Yeah.
Like you are my partner and teammate, and like we've got each other's best interest at heart, and that's what makes it work.
Yeah.
And you know, certainly we fall into our own roles. I wouldn't say they're necessarily gender normative roles. Some of them are.
Yeah, but not always.
But it's the roles that make the most sense for us to play based on our skill set, what we like to do, what we're able to do, how we're able to help. And that's how we've always lived our life, which was one of the first things you and I came together with, which was the idea of when she succeeds, we succeed. When he succeeds, we succeed.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's about. It's about the success of you and I in Brooklyn and our little family and whatever else that means. Sometimes it's professional stuff. Sometimes it's personal stuff. Sometimes it's relational, emotional, mental, whatever it is. But like your partner, or excuse me, your spouse hopefully should also feel like your partner and not like the person where it's like, well, they never show up.
Yeah.
You know, I'm so glad when they're out of the house. It's kind of the crux of why we started our show months ago, which is like, I love the relationship that we have, and I'd love to be connected with more people who enjoy their relationships too. And I hope that more people can start to learn the value of having a spouse that is your partner and your teammate and not just your wife or husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope so too.
So that's all. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that? Or are you good to go?
I'm good to go.
I'm good to go too.
Looking forward to next week and seeing you guys all here. And we love you guys. Thanks for listening. And we hope that you spend most of your days hardly working through anything you need to work through.
Bye.
Bye. It was a low bye.